Henry and I have known and loved each other for 28 years. Just when I needed him the most, he left me on the operating table for another woman. When I presented the divorce agreement, he looked at me sadly, tears welling up in his eyes like a child. But Henry, it should have been me crying the most. This trip was for our 5th wedding anniversary with Henry. I had to create a scene at his company to get him to agree to this 2-day trip. When I asked him to accompany me at home, he always used work as an excuse, ignoring me. Well, if there's no love, what's the point of celebrating the wedding anniversary? He must have found my obsession with this anniversary ridiculous. So, I caused a scene at his company. Henry was in a meeting when I arrived. His stern expression turned even grimmer when he saw me. The meeting halted, and every department head respectfully passed by me. But I knew what they were saying behind my back. Karina used to be so gentle. How come she's been acting like a shrew lately? It's true, when you've been lonely in a marriage for a long time, you start to lose yourself in self-doubt. Henry rubbed his temples wearily and impatiently asked, "What is it?" Leaning against the door frame, I casually said with a smile, "What else do you think I'm here for?" "Our wedding anniversary." Henry looked at me in disbelief, as if thinking I had gone mad to cause a scene at the office just for a lousy wedding anniversary. He pulled me into the meeting room and shut the glass door, thinking it could block out the gossip from outside. "What's wrong with you, Karina? I really want to crack open your head and see what's inside," he said angrily, poking my forehead. It felt strange. When we were younger, I used to enjoy seeing him lose his temper, but not be able to harm me when poking my forehead. At that time, I would take the opportunity to grab his hand and bite it hard. Watching him hop around holding his hand and swearing, but not being able to hit me, I found it cute. But now, I just felt dirty. He was dirty inside out. I pushed away his hand in disgust and said, "Are you coming or not?" "Henry, you know my personality well, I won't give up until I get what I want. I have plenty of time to waste on you." As he saw my indifference and nonchalance, he suddenly lost the anger he had before, looking at me disappointedly for a moment, then finally exhausted and powerless, sitting heavily on the conference table. "Karina, how did you become so unreasonable?" he asked wearily, seeing him in pain and distress, wanting to cry, as if the pressure I gave him was unbearable, made me wonder why I had become so unreasonable. "Maybe because I don't love you anymore, so I won't stand in your shoes and consider your feelings, nor will I change myself to compromise. Because I don't love you anymore, so seeing you in pain like me seems fair." "Henry, a marriage involves 2 people. It can't just be me decaying and rotting away in this marriage. If you want to escape the confines of marriage, I'll give you that freedom, but it comes at a price." On the day of departure for our wedding anniversary, while brushing my teeth, I brushed too hard and poked my gum, causing a sharp pain. I was gritting my teeth in pain when I heard Henry on the phone in the bedroom. "After the anniversary, I'll come see you. Take care of yourself and the baby in your belly. If anything happens, you can reach out to my mom or the doctor." His voice sounded gentle and soothing, full of coaxing and appeasement. It had been so long since he had spoken to me like that. Our last conversation was last night. I showed him the hotel I booked, and suddenly, he exploded again. He paced around the living room with patience and restraint, getting increasingly restless and frustrated, with no outlet for his agitation. Finally, unable to tolerate it any longer, he unleashed his anger on me. His eyes glared with fury, his face turning red with suppressed rage, his neck veins popping out, like a pent-up angry beast. "Karina, why are you always so self-righteous? Karina, can't you be more sensible? Karina, the company is busy lately. We can go on the anniversary trip whenever. Karina, can't you stop being unreasonable? I can't drink at work functions. How can the company function properly?" Each word accused me of my incompetence in this marriage. I stared numbly at the man in front of me, bursting with anger, his features contorted in rage. I thought for a long time, but I couldn't find a reason to continue loving him. I used to truly love him, but now I am truly disappointed in him. Thinking about this, the gum pain suddenly disappeared, replaced by a dense stabbing sensation in my heart. I stared at my withering reflection in the mirror. Several times recently, I almost couldn't recognize the woman in the mirror, looking sorrowful, with a face full of worry, like a rose that is gradually wilting, no longer showing its youthful thorns, only the decaying body, indicating its past glory. They say marriage is the tomb of love. At first, I didn't believe it. Henry and I have been together for 28 years. From our 1-month celebration to our first steps. From the little red flower in kindergarten to the perfect score certificate in elementary school. From red envelopes during the new year to a scholarship for further education. From the hardships of starting a business to the company going public. We went from school uniforms to wedding gowns, from youthful inexperience to mature stability, with so many memories that they couldn't fit anymore. I thought we had already merged into each other's lives. The Henry, who was once all about me, must not want me to lose hope in love. The diamond ring on my right ring finger was purchased by Henry after he became successful. He stood in front of me, holding the ring, with eyes filled with hope and stardust, earnestly promising me, "Kaina, I can finally give you a happy life. I will make you happy forever." Yet, after just 5 years of wearing it, the gleam had faded, much like our deteriorating marriage. When I came out of the bathroom, he looked momentarily flustered, then hurriedly hung up the phone in a disguised manner. When he finally glanced at me as if nothing had happened, his eyes were so devoid of emotion, as if he didn't want to meet mine. Quickly looking away, "Hurry up and pack for the trip. I'll prepare breakfast." After last night, he had compromised in the end. I watched his busy figure in the kitchen for a long time, reminiscing about all the moments between us. At that moment, as he turned to meet my gaze, a moment of confusion passed over him before he started scolding me. "Kaina, are you up to mischief again? I'm tired lately. I don't have the energy to play with you." I smiled at him, which was rare for me. "Henry, don't worry, this is the last time." It had been a long time since we had a calm chat, and seeing me like this, he stood frozen with the bowl in his hand. Finally, with a smile that carried a hint of compromise, he said, "Kaina, I know I've been neglectful due to work recently, but once this period is over, things will be better." I smiled silently. "But Henry, we no longer have a future." Henry was drinking with clients last night, so I drove the car. We didn't talk the whole way. In Henry's eyes, our marriage was like a piece of gum that had been chewed for a long time, still had some flavor, but had lost its initial sweetness, and it would be a shame to just spit it out. After all, the sincere effort was not fake. I quietly kept my eyes on the road, just wanting to arrive at our destination quickly. The destination for our anniversary was the place where Henry and I grew up together. It was a quaint town, still retaining the historic charm of its architecture, and had not been rebuilt or heavily damaged, now turned into a tourist destination. A few years ago, Henry donated money to our junior high school, and later on our honeymoon, we went there. It was agreed that we would visit there every year from then on. 1. Because of the beautiful scenery. 2. Because of the many happy memories we shared there. 3. My parents' graves were there. When memories turn into a burden, the person who finds it most difficult to break free will be dragged down. Henry's phone rang in the car, and he visibly hesitated. I glanced at the caller ID in the corner of my eye. It said, "Lily." With me present, he was not free to answer the call. Afraid of exposing his actions, he became more agitated, and after turning off the screen, he roughly stuffed the phone into his pocket. Not long after, the phone rang again. In order to spend our anniversary with Henry, I made it known to everyone in the company. Although Lily was at home with Henry, the people in the company would inevitably know about it. After all, there were many of her friends and informants in the company, and they were waiting for her to take advantage of the situation once she climbed up the ladder. It was now or never. She was targeting me, and naturally, I couldn't let her off easy. Otherwise, there were many ways to force Henry to spend the anniversary with me, and there was no need to make it a public spectacle. She couldn't wait to call, just to show her presence and also to demonstrate against me. I smiled and said, "Aren't you going to answer it? It's been ringing." Henry continued to silence the call, looking annoyed and indifferent. "It's not urgent." Seeing his nonchalant attitude, it really didn't seem urgent. But just half a month ago, he had panicked because of a call from that woman, leaving me alone in the hospital. I had a stomach ache that day, feeling so much pain that I almost fainted from cold sweat. After he took me to the hospital, before waiting for the test results, he received a call from that woman. She had almost had a miscarriage recently, but was now feeling better, and she didn't feel safe leaving Henry alone for even a moment. Upon receiving the call, Henry couldn't hide his panic, left me in the care of the doctors, and ran out of the ward. My test results came back. I had appendicitis. Lying on the operating table, it was the second time I had felt that much pain. Staring at the gradually dimming light above the operating room, I had never despised myself as much as I did at that moment. After graduation, he said he hoped I would take care of the home while he worked outside. So I gave up my high-paying job and became a housewife, revolving around family and my husband. I thought that by giving up everything for the family, I would earn Henry's appreciation and respect. But what did I end up with? Clearly, it was a family of two, but he ended up being the one busy and exhausted working outside for the family, while my efforts were gradually buried in trivial life, taken for granted. Later, because we couldn't have children, I became the scapegoat for Henry's family, completely abandoned by Henry and his family. So he hid it from me and shamelessly found another woman, in order to have a grandson for the family. My mother-in-law, who used to love me dearly and said she sympathized with me for enduring the hardships with Henry during the early days of poverty, decisively helped Henry cover up his affair from me. They thought I didn't know, but in fact they were the fools who knew nothing. So what does marriage really bring to a woman? Love, trust, loyalty, and even a beautiful vision of the world. They shattered my most devout beliefs step by step, and then crushed my last bit of perseverance. The phone call went unanswered, and the atmosphere inexplicably became awkward. Henry nervously began a conversation. I heard a few days ago that our elementary school teacher has advanced stomach cancer. How did such a healthy person get this disease? My heart surged suddenly, and I blurted out faster than my brain could process. If one day I get cancer, Henry, will you stay by my side? He frowned at me, his anger barely concealed as he spoke. Kaina, are you uncomfortable if you don't act out? Why are you saying this out of nowhere? In the past, if I acted out, he would only compromise, looking indulgent yet helpless. So, whether a woman is acting out depends on whether the other person loves her. I nonchalantly joked, just kidding, why are you nervous? Henry seemed to realize that his reaction was too intense, took a deep breath and said, Kaina, don't make this kind of joke in the future, it's not funny. It seemed he still cared about me, but, between us, besides the irreparable marriage, there was nothing else to hold grudges over. Even if in the end the things he hid from me were revealed, for him, it would simply be a divorce. No need to hope for my death. Soon, Lily's call came through to me. Ever since he decided to be with Lily behind my back, I had received the challenge from that woman. Lily was a new intern at the company, in her early 20s, full of vitality and outstanding looks. The type of woman that weary housewives, who were caught up in mundane tasks, would be wary of. But at that time, I didn't take her seriously. She added me on the pretext of work, saying she had heard that Henry loved his wife dearly, hoping that if she made a mistake at work, I could speak up for her. At first, I thought this young girl had lost her mind. If it was truly a work mistake, I would not speak up for her. I didn't know her well. If any intern could come and talk to me as boldly as her, then the company might as well become a charity organization directly. Until I saw that familiar figure appearing frequently on her social media, I realized her true intentions. But it was too late. Or perhaps, I just didn't know myself well enough before, and I was too confident about Henry. I thought our more than 20 years of relationship, the fact that I stood by him from the dark struggles of youth to the dawn, meant that I was irreplaceable in his life. But the truth proved otherwise. I was not the irreplaceable one all along. It was just that no one had appeared who could replace me before. When I picked up the phone, I intentionally put it on speaker. Henry's expression immediately looked uneasy and flustered. Despite his best efforts to conceal it, his strong anxiety was palpable. Kaina, I'm sick and feeling awful. I scoffed. Calling me when you're sick? Lily pretended to be apprehensive and said, Kaina, I heard you and Henry are celebrating your wedding anniversary. Hope I'm not disturbing you guys. Even now, I can't forget the face she made when she came to see me after she had caused my miscarriage and made me stay in the hospital, showing off the birthday photos. Kaina, it was my birthday last night. Henry was with me the whole time. If you had just listened to me and aborted the baby earlier, you wouldn't have needed my help. Henry's blurred profile was clear in the photo. Last night, as I lay on the operating table, with cold instruments moving inside me, when he and my child were taken out, Henry was celebrating with his new love. Thinking about my poor child, my whole being felt stirred up with anger. I have never hated those two wretched people so much as I did at that moment. Lily continued to apologize with remorse on the phone, but before I could say anything, Henry snatched the phone away. If you know you're being a bother, then don't call. If you're sick, go to the hospital. If you're not, go check your brain. The call ended abruptly. His actions did not surprise me. He was never one to be trifled with, hence how he climbed to the top of his industry at such a young age, earning respect from everyone. Other than Henry's mother and me, no one else could make him bow his head. But now, Lily thought having a child would give her some power. Little did she know, aging is inevitable, while youth is eternal. Just as I gave my youth to Henry, but that didn't stop him from abandoning me once he achieved success. If a man chooses you for your youth, he will inevitably choose someone younger later on. So, can't you take good care of yourself? The path was chosen by yourself, so you must be prepared to pay the price. From childhood, Henry lived next door to my house. When I went back to my mother's hometown for Chinese New Year as a child, I heard people in the village talk about the relationship between Henry's mother and my mother. My mother and Henry's mother were childhood friends. After graduating from high school, my mother left her hometown to go to university, and later married my father, who was a classmate at the university, and moved to another city. After that, my mother and Henry's mother lost contact. The next time they met was when Henry's mother had nowhere else to go and sought refuge with my mother. Henry's mother had grown up in a family with a strong preference for boys over girls. After she got married and had a girl before Henry, she was pressured by her husband's family to have an abortion. Later, when her husband was killed in a gambling debt dispute, Henry's mother found out she was pregnant again. Determined and unwilling to give up, she wanted to have a child who was her own flesh and blood. Afraid of having another girl who would be mistreated by her in-laws, she ran away to seek refuge with my mother while pregnant. My parents, being doctors, considered it their duty to save lives and help those in need. Moreover, my mother had grown up with Henry's mother since childhood, and she was pregnant at the time. Concerned for my mother's well-being, my father willingly rented out the old house where my grandparents used to live at a low price to Henry's mother. However, there were some discrepancies between the script of our childhood friendship. I never liked Henry from a young age. It was common for orphans and widows to be bullied, and Henry, over time, developed a violent temper, poor academic performance, and had a reclusive personality, making him an outcast among the people I knew. Henry had no friends. His only friend was probably me, but I didn't like playing with him. I despised his rudeness, aggression, and lack of manners. He was full of hostility towards everyone, and even a slightly insensitive remark could turn the sensitive him into a prickly hedgehog. Every time he got into a fight with someone, Henry's mother would get involved. So, I detested him, detested how he caused arguments between my mother and father. Thankfully, my father loved my mother a lot, so those minor arguments could not shake their relationship. Henry must have sensed my aversion towards him. Whenever he saw me surrounded by many good friends on our way to and from school, he would consciously keep his distance, walking alone not too far behind me. I knew he was always waiting for me to invite him to walk with us to and from school, but I never did. This situation continued until one day in junior high school. It's not just the sensitive minds of single parents. Many people are more afraid of losing what little they have. When my father went to school again to settle a fight on his behalf, he actually said, "Uncle, could you please stop getting involved in my family's affairs in the future?" People outside would say that my father had become too involved with their family, but I knew, partly my mother's idea, partly my father's willingness to share the burden with my mother. Every family should have a man as the pillar, so outsiders wouldn't dare to bully women and children. This is the meaning of the physiological differences between men and women that God gives. So, to outsiders, we said that Henry's mother was a distant relative on my father's side, but over time, gossip and ill intentions couldn't be stopped. I knew that the hurtful words repeatedly spoken about Henry wounded his sensitive heart, but if he didn't despair and gave up on himself, how could he let my father step in for him every time? So, what he needed to do was not to reject the kindness of others as a burden, but to find ways to make that kindness valuable, and let others feel the rewards of showing kindness. That day on the way home from school, a rare pop-up prompt for assistance stopped Henry. In his surprised and cautiously eager eyes, I grabbed his hair. "Henry, did you lose your mind from all the fights? Who gave you the right to speak to my father like that? He's genuinely nice to you, worrying about you and everything, but to you, his kindness has become a burden. Since you're so capable, why do you always stir up trouble? Believe me, I can beat some sense into you." In fact, I was only 11 years old at that time, and most of what I've said was just bravado. At 13, Henry stood out from his peers with his powerful punches. Although he was known to be aloof, irritable, and quick to violence with others, he would only curse and grumble when faced with my retaliation. After I hit him, my mom scolded me. I sat outside rubbing my sore bottom, and Henry awkwardly handed me 2 cheap candies, saying he didn't report me, but my mom saw the bruises on his face, so next time, I shouldn't hit his face. The bruises on the delicate face of the teen Henry were evident, but the effort to please was even more apparent in his concealed eyes. I understood that his prickly demeanor was a facade, as no one else could protect his mother. I recalled my mom's words after she spanked me. "Karina, I don't want you to be too kind to not see the good and evil in this world clearly. I also don't want you to compromise yourself in your interactions with Henry. You can dislike him, ignore him, but you must not bully others. That is my only requirement for you." I squatted in the corner, pondering deeply. In fact, I didn't dislike Henry. I just couldn't stand how he masked himself with aggression and self-destruction, rejecting all the kindness the world had to offer him. Henry, If you can top the class in the future and stop fighting, I won't hit your face again. Henry, squatting in front of me, was stunned. He looked at me intently and then carefully opened an almost melted candy wrapper, offering it to me. All right, he said softly but earnestly. Then, he tentatively asked, can I walk you to and from school if I get the top score? I held the candy in my mouth and tapped the back of his head playfully, saying, don't push your luck. And, this candy is not good, too sweet. I grabbed another candy and stuffed it into his mouth. Despite the swelling on one side of his face, Henry's awkward smile couldn't hide the attractiveness in his eyes. Kaina, when Chinese New Year comes, I'll buy you chocolate. I refused, saying chocolates were too expensive and I would buy them myself. At New Year, I scolded Henry for thinking about buying me chocolate, but he handed me a piece of chocolate from his own savings, which his mom saved from the annual gifts. Helen and Henry were both extremely thrifty, believing money should be spent wisely. Therefore, a box of chocolates was the most extravagant thing Henry could afford. Even though his washed-out cotton clothes didn't match his peers' attire, the vibrant sparkle in his eyes made him look attractive. Yes, this was how teenagers should look, full of vitality, passionate, and hopeful. Helen said forcefully, Henry, you must come back. It's all for your own good. She hung up the phone decisively. Henry took a deep breath, then looked at me with a pleasing expression. I interrupted him before he could say anything. I'm not stopping the car. His smile froze. What do you mean? I impatiently replied, literally, you can either choose to jump out of the car, or come back with me to my hometown. Knowing I wouldn't budge, he tried to persuade me. Kaina, you know my mom. She must have an urgent reason for asking me to go back. Let's go first. I promised to make up for our anniversary. I didn't understand how he could shamelessly lie in front of me, but to be honest, I didn't care much about the anniversary. Henry, think it through. If you miss our anniversary this time, there won't be a next time. Henry looked at me angrily. Are you just picking a fight for no reason? I despised him for using the term picking a fight. Is that what you call picking a fight? Your family sure likes to meddle in other people's business. Henry burst into laughter. Kaina, let me say it again. If you have an issue with me, address it to me. Don't make faces at my mom. His words made me burst into laughter. Exactly. She's your mom, not mine. If she makes me unhappy, I can tolerate it once or twice, but must I endure it for a lifetime? Do you Henry family members think I owe you something just because you used to take advantage of my family in the past, turning it into a reflex that I owe you? Sensitive as Henry is, he despises being reminded of his past struggles when he has come this far. He hates being reminded of his past failures and hardships, and the scrutiny he faced. Kaina, do you have to pick a fight to feel comfortable? I remember the first time Henry and I fought was about having children. Without asking the reason, Henry came in and started accusing me. My mom was wrong in her attitude, but she is an elder after all. You can't talk to her like that. I retorted, what did I say to her? When she blamed me for not having children, I got frustrated and said, am I the one who doesn't want to have kids? Have you ever considered if it's Henry's issue? After all these years of trying various remedies and medications, going through the torment of taking pills every day, they should understand better than anyone. Under the torment of both physical and mental pain, I really couldn't hold on anymore. But Henry didn't know. Kaina, you are getting more and more outrageous. After enduring the long-term torment, unable to bear it, I cried, Henry, you never care about my feelings. I have made more efforts than any of you to have a child. What else will you do besides blaming me? Especially you. You never put yourself in my shoes. Henry paused, then apologized with remorse. Kaina, I'm sorry. My mom has been driving me crazy lately. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. He apologized sincerely, making me think he might change. Later, I found out that while I was at home waiting for him after preparing dinner, he was out in fancy restaurants dating Lily. I was so overwhelmed by the medication, vomiting bile until I was choked. That feeling of weakness like suffocating, no one could understand. During that time, he was at the hospital, accompanying Lily for her prenatal checkup. Thinking back to all that had happened, I didn't even want to talk to him. Do you think you can threaten me with uncles and aunts? Whatever, think what you want. You can't threaten me with uncles and aunts. If we could have a child, things wouldn't be like this. I couldn't help but laugh. Henry, the living can't control you. So what can the dead use to threaten you? Besides, you and I will never have a child. Never. Even now, I can't forget the moment when I came home excited with my pregnancy test results, only to be doused with cold water by Henry and his mother. Being pushed to the brink by Helen, Henry was only asking me to yield to his mom. Helen blamed me, saying it's unfilial not to give the Henry family descendants. But then I got pregnant. I returned home with the test results, subtly asking if they preferred a girl or a boy. Helen threw a chicken into the pot, adding infertility herbs while coldly saying, "Abort if it's a girl, it must be a boy." The joy of pregnancy shattered. I stood frozen, pinning the last hope on Henry, but he just patted my shoulder. "Kaina, listen to Mom." At that moment, perhaps the child in my stomach sensed the familiar bloodline and wanted him gone, and that triggered a reaction in me, running to the bathroom vomiting until I was helpless. Helen came excitedly. "Kaina, are you pregnant?" I smiled bitterly. "I feel nauseous as soon as I smell the medicine. Don't you already know that?" How could I dare to tell them I'm pregnant at a time like this? She turned back to the kitchen, disappointed, to continue adding various medicinal herbs to the chicken soup. I touched my stomach, feeling homeless for the second time after my parents passed away. Initially, I naively thought that when the baby was further along, they would accept it regardless of gender. At least Henry wouldn't be indifferent. After all, it was his child. But that day, when I had a miscarriage and lay in the hospital, Lily's appearance made me fully awake. Henry had been cheating on me since the time I was struggling to conceive, so he wouldn't care about the child in my belly at all. While I was mentally exhausted and depressed to the point of breakdown, my good husband and mother-in-law were busy caring for another woman. Looking at Henry's grim expression in the carriage now, I felt a bit relieved. My child was gone. How could they live so carefree? "Henry, your and your mother's selfishness are truly alike." Henry, angered and incoherent, pointed and shouted, I think you're insane. Stop the car." I said stop. He was so furious that he even reached for the steering wheel. Waking up from fainting, I could still see the smoking hood through the windshield, and immediately thought of the word car accident. I turned my head and saw Henry unconscious in the passenger seat. He was tightly restrained by the seatbelt with his upper body, his arms somewhat protecting me, his body slanting towards me. I pushed away his hands, shouted at him for a long time, but got no response. The desolate outskirts were pitch black. The headlights were damaged and flickering, illuminating the broken tree trunk in front of the car. In the distance, there were twinkling lights, obscured by mist, appearing and disappearing, not quite real. In a daze, there was a sense of helplessness and loneliness, as if I was the only one left in the world, waiting to die alone. But I wasn't ready to give up. The person who deserved to die the most hadn't died yet. How could I accept dying like this? Before long, Henry woke up. In his eagerness to go back to see his mistress, he even risked grabbing the steering wheel while I was driving, doing such foolish things. I didn't expect to argue with him again over this. I got out of the car, and Henry, in pain, limped toward me with his right leg covered. "Kaina, are you okay? Thanks to you, we almost got hit." Realizing his fault, Henry fell silent. He followed me with a limp, walking in the direction of the twinkling lights. "Kaina, I'm sorry. I was too hasty just now. Luckily you're okay." Due to Henry's foolish behavior, my plans were all disrupted. I stopped walking in irritation, thinking I stopped to wait for him. A glimmer of hope appeared in Henry's eyes, but faced with my indifferent and impatient gaze, Henry was completely stunned. "Henry, you've done so many things wrong to me, so don't pretend to care about me anymore. It's disgusting." On hearing this, Henry's already pale face turned even paler. He then turned angry and started to push. "Yes, it was my fault just now, but are you faultless? Why have we ended up like this? Kaina, why do you always do things your way, never caring about my feelings? I'm caught in the middle between you and my mom. Do you know how difficult it is for me? All these years, how repressed have I been? Do you know?" I felt my mind go blank at his words, blood boiling inside me. How could Henry cheat on me and then have the nerve to blame me so confidently? Walking up to Henry with trembling hands, I slapped him hard. "I always do things my way. Who listened to you and gave up the opportunity to study abroad as an exchange student? Who quit a high-paying job to wholeheartedly take care of you and your mom to support your startup? Anyone can criticize me because they are inconsequential. They don't know anything, but you do. We've known each other for 28 years. You know better than anyone about my sacrifices for this family. Henry, how can you be so shameless?" The more I accused him, the more I realized how much we had changed in each other's eyes. He became filthy, and I became repugnant. "Henry, how dare you take my sacrifices for granted and still show me a face of disgust? Where do you get off?" "Kaina." Henry realized he had said the wrong thing, reached out with guilt, but I pushed his hand away firmly, stepping back in distress. "Back off, you're dirty. Just the thought of you touching other women makes me sick. This person I once loved deeply could still feign innocence after hurting me. It's truly disgusting." Henry couldn't understand the meaning behind my words and hastily brushed off the dust on himself. "Kaina, I spoke out of turn just now. You know I didn't mean it. Can we stop fighting? Let's find the way quickly and go back to our hometown to celebrate our anniversary. Go back with me. Who are you being charitable to? Is our wedding anniversary just mine? Henry, do you really think I care about this worthless anniversary? Karina, can we stop fighting? Look at our current situation. At some point, Henry no longer tried to appease me as he used to, but when he couldn't get what he wanted from me, he would quickly change face. Who gave him the audacity? It seems that as his company grew, and he was referred to as boss by others, he gradually stopped being Henry. He became a puppet devoured by desires, gradually losing himself. As I looked him up and down, I suddenly found it funny. Henry, take a good look. You're the one injured right now. If I leave you here now, you might not make it through the night on the road. As for me, I wasn't planning on returning alive. I had already prepared to go down with Henry on this wedding anniversary trip. Somehow, it seemed like the heavens understood my intentions, which led to this car accident. Henry, how about we just die like this? A car accident sounds better than suicide. Henry looked at me incredulously, unable to believe that such malicious words could come from my mouth. Karina, are you out of your mind? I laughed silently, tears already streaming down my face. Yes. I went crazy as soon as I found out about Lily being pregnant with your child. When Lily's child was almost a month old, mine was just 3 months old. I was constantly worried about Henry and his mother finding out about my pregnancy, which made me emotionally unstable and led to various health issues. Fortunately, my child was strong enough, and each hospital checkup showed everything was normal. One day at the hospital for a prenatal checkup, I ran into Lily, who was also pregnant. It was ironic that Lily, protected by my former good husband and mother-in-law, was being watched over with such care, while I, legally protected, felt like a lowly third party, hiding in the shadows. When our eyes met, Lily flashed a provoking smile at me. My already fragile state couldn't bear witnessing that scene that day, and I ended up having premature labor, and had to stay in the hospital. When Lily entered the hospital room, the doctor, mistaking her for a relative, reminded her to take care of the pregnant woman's emotions. Lily's face, filled with contempt, haunted me. Karina, you are just Henry's mediocre wife. I know he's on the rise now and can't afford to have the stigma of abandoning his wife after getting rich. So, I don't care if I become his official wife. If you don't mind either, then go ahead and spend the rest of your life in that cold home. But remember, life is long. Be sensible. Don't keep this child and ask for a divorce. You two started from scratch. You'll get a big sum of money out of it, which would benefit everyone. For a moment, the thought of divorce crossed my mind, to let them and myself off the hook. But it was just a fleeting thought, for I couldn't let go. Helping Henry succeed and then allowing him to revel in wealth and other women. There's no such bargain. I love him, but I am not foolish. If they could treat me this way, how could I easily let them off? In the past, when my parents were alive, I was bold and brave, being myself, knowing my greatest support was my parents' unmatched love. They gave me the courage to face the world. But then, I became a sidekick to Henry, trapped in family trivialities and losing myself, becoming the paranoid woman who doubted her husband's infidelity all the time. If my parents were still alive, would they regret helping Helen back then? I had to make them pay for it so I could reconcile with myself. I picked myself up, started getting involved in the company's affairs, but personal transformation takes time. Thankfully, the baby in my belly gave me the courage to keep going. Except for the period of mental haze during pregnancy, I haven't had any health issues after regaining my strength. While others are nauseous and doubting life during pregnancy, my baby seemed to be considerate, causing me only to have an increased appetite, without any other problems. It took me 3 months to familiarize myself with the business and stand firm in the company, earning praises from my partners. But in Henry's eyes, I was still the imperfect me. In work, he criticized me for not being able to take care of the family, and when I resigned to become a homemaker, taking care of every detail, he pointed out my inability to bear a child and generated conflicts with Helen. Now that I'm back to work, he still believes I don't care for them enough. People are never satisfied, but that no longer concerns me. Just when I thought everything was going as expected, reality delivered a fatal blow. I managed to evade Henry's suspicion by attributing my weight gain to work anxiety, except I couldn't evade the craziness of Lily. During a company celebration, I fell in the hotel bathroom, prompting a frantic call for an ambulance, only for Lily to show up. She smashed my phone and, looking down on me like a dying dog, she uttered coldly, "Karina, I told you to get rid of the child early on. Being a single mother won't do you any good in the future. The company belongs to Henry alone, and there's no way you'll get half. If you don't obediently divorce, next time, it won't be such petty tricks. Waking up in the hospital, Lily showed me a picture of Henry with a cake. Karina, it was my birthday last night, and Henry was with me all the time. If you had obediently listened and gotten rid of the child earlier, you wouldn't need my help now. With the child gone, you can finally leave Henry for good. Touching my flat stomach, I realized in despair that all my efforts were in the wrong direction. I thought that working hard to secure my place in the company and building enough confidence to break ties with Henry was the best choice. But from the start, I should have killed these despicable people. Maybe then, my child wouldn't have died innocently, and maybe I wouldn't be left with the last shreds of a connection to this world. Looking into Henry's eyes with determination, I tried to make him understand that he was the culprit behind all this. My plan was to take Henry back to the place where he was born on our wedding anniversary and leave him there for good. As for me, I would die in my own home. Of course, I know my parents would blame me, but I really couldn't go on. As for Lily, my lawyer would reveal the evidence of Henry cheating with Lily after my death. It might not affect someone like Lily, but how could her child live unscathed while mine couldn't? Henry's voice shook. Since when did you know? Does it matter? Henry, I shouted uncontrollably. I regret rescuing you from the abyss. I shouldn't have interfered, and should have let you struggle in the mud for the rest of your life. Neither you nor your mother deserve anyone's kindness. Previously, whenever Henry mentioned Helen, it was like touching a sore spot. He stood there frozen, looking painfully distraught. Then, he started telling the story about Lily, blaming it all on alcohol. But I knew it was just an excuse he gave himself. I didn't want things to turn out like this, but my mom pressured me. She was acting crazy, insisting on having a grandchild. Even though she had been hurt in such relationships before, she refused to let go of me or herself. Karina, my mom raised me single-handedly, faced discrimination when she was young, and finally overcame hardships in her old age. She only lacks a grandchild, and being stuck between you and her for so many years is driving me crazy. If we give her this child, I promise we won't let her control us anymore. We can have a good life together, and I will make it up to you. I couldn't help but scoff. A future? Henry, there is no future between us. Henry took a step back in panic, a pained smile on his face as he asked, Karina, what do you mean? I sighed. Don't worry, I won't let you die here, at least not me. If I had to die, I'd rather die with my parents, not with you. According to the journey, we were not far from my hometown, but after walking for a while, this road still felt unfamiliar. As we continued, my mood grew increasingly restless, while Henry, cautious and insecure, followed, trying to comfort me, but also afraid of my anger, his demeanor submissive. It wasn't until a child appeared that the silence was broken. The child, around 5 or 6 years old, had such delicate features that it was hard to tell if it was a boy or a girl while silent. Without waiting for me to ask, the child pointed in a direction. We went around the bushes, and a small path came into view. The child took my hand, and as I looked down at him, I felt a strange sense of warmth. We walked for a while, and the path remained unchanged. Henry, surprisingly patient and gentle, spoke to the child, Kid, you want uncle to carry you the rest of the way. It was evident that Henry also liked the child, but the child furrowed its brows and avoided Henry's outstretched hand, looking at me with longing in its eyes. I smiled, picked him up, and suddenly felt a pang of sadness. If Henry and I had a child by now, they would be about the same age. Thinking of my innocent child, tears welled up as the child, sensing my sadness, touched my face with its chubby little hand. In that moment, I couldn't hold back my tears. During my early pregnancy, I hoped to keep Henry by having a child, but after seeing his and Helen's real characters, I just wanted someone in this world who shared my bloodline. Deep down, I was also selfish. After losing my parents and experiencing the abandonment of someone I once loved, I longed and hoped for the arrival of this child. During my pregnancy, I had imagined our future life countless times. If separated from Henry, I would dedicate myself entirely to the child. We would be the closest people to each other, bound by blood, the most cherished individuals in each other's lives, after our parents. I wouldn't be alone anymore. But then, I lost my child. Henry didn't understand why I suddenly started crying. He reached out, wanting to wipe my tears. Karina, we will find a way out of here. If we don't, I'll protect you. Just please don't cry. Disgusted, I turned my head away. His hand fell, and he looked forlorn as he withdrew it. Then, after a long silence, the child suddenly spoke. Uncle, which path will you choose? Only then did I notice that there was a fork in the road ahead. Henry hesitated briefly, then looked at me and said, whichever path you choose, I'll take the other one. The child, with a somewhat mature tone, said, Uncle, you can't walk the same path. Why? Just as Henry started to speak, I interrupted. I choose this one. Seeing my resolute look, Henry gazed at me complicatedly for a moment, saying nothing further. In the end, Henry and I embarked on 2 different paths. Before parting, Henry looked at me with reluctance. Karina, if I find help, I'll come back for you. Whatever you decide once you're out, I understand, it's my fault. Henry's promises were unreliable, so I didn't pay much attention. I held the child and continued walking ahead. After what seemed like a long time, the child spoke again. Do you know, children choose their mothers from heaven. They search very earnestly for someone they like, and once chosen, they won't retreat no matter how many setbacks they face, because they love that mother. With tears in my voice, I asked, sweetheart, how do you know that? The child's eyes were clear and pure, like stars scattered in them. He gave me a bright smile and said in innocence, because I also chose a mother. I searched very earnestly for a long time and faced many setbacks, but I'm not afraid, because I know she loves me very much. She went through a lot of pain just to meet me. So before I was born, I hope my mother is happy and joyful. I'm looking forward to meeting her. Before losing consciousness, the child touched my face again and said, Mom, be happy. In the car accident, I had only minor scratches. 3 months later, when I woke up, Henry was still in the ICU, with little chance of recovery. Helen was cruel in her words, blaming me for Henry's condition. But wasn't she the one at fault? The authorities checked the dashcam footage, clearly proving that Henry was at fault for the accident. The first thing I did after waking up was to stabilize the internal turmoil within the company with several shareholders. After all, if something happened to the company, I would have to sell my shares at a low price. Henry's accident was sudden, and he hadn't left a written will. As the legal representative of the company, if Henry died, his shares would directly become mine as the first successor. Other shareholders were deliberately trying to win me over. That's when Lily showed up. After Henry's accident, I took control of the company. Helen's days have been tough lately, with her son in the hospital needing expensive medical care. She had no time for anything else. Lily was eager to return to her lavish lifestyle and couldn't sit still. I woke up after 3 months, waiting for this day. Lily's cheeks were sunken, and her eyes were filled with sadness, as if she had aged more than 10 years. She was like a different person compared to the one who once showed indifference as I bled in the bathroom. She knelt down, begging for my forgiveness. Karina, I know I've wronged you in the past, but I am also a victim. Helen promised me that if I had this child, she would give me a lot of money. If my child wasn't the only one, I would be useless to them. If I had unexpected pregnancy, my life would be ruined forever. I found it ridiculous. You're innocent. Lily, were they forcing you to take that step? When you maliciously killed my child, did you think about how innocent my child was? The only reason I didn't get rid of the bastard in your belly wasn't because I'm kind. It was to earn virtue for my child. One was a mistress who got pregnant and squabbled over inheritance. The other was a wife who had worked hard with her husband to build everything from scratch, only to discover she had become a cuckolded wife after his accident. I had the upper hand morally and legally. After selling this news to the media, my lawyer used evidence prepared in advance to help me file for divorce. Helen seemed unaware of the seriousness of the situation. She still believed I was the foolish woman deeply in love with Henry. She thought as long as she didn't agree to the divorce, Lily wouldn't care if Henry became a vegetable, but I would not neglect him. So even if Lily used the child to threaten her, she wouldn't agree to the divorce until I made a move with Henry's company. Helen couldn't withstand the media pressure. She was afraid of the escalating situation, worried that her son would wake up to a tarnished reputation, and feared the impact on the company. So, in the end, she had to agree. After a smooth divorce, I sold off the shares I got from Henry. This time, I let myself off the hook. He didn't matter to me anymore. In the second month after the divorce, Henry woke up. The accident apparently caused him amnesia, forgetting about his affair. He became a pitiful man, the victim of an accidental car crash, who had been abandoned by his wife. Human memory is truly miraculous in creating lies to elevate oneself. He wanted to live in the lie, but I couldn't allow it. When I saw Henry at the hospital, pretending to be unsurprised was fake. Despite knowing he had been bedridden for so long and likely looked unwell, seeing him in person was still a shock. In just a few months, Henry visibly shrunk to the point of looking unrecognizable, with white hair giving him the appearance of an aged and weathered man, in a state of low spirits and confusion. But when he saw me standing at the door, he hesitated for a moment before instinctively hiding behind Helen, his voice hoarse and trembling. "Karina, don't look at me. Don't look at me." It seemed he knew he didn't look good, so he dared not make eye contact with me. When Helen saw her precious son being agitated by me, she flared up, pointing at me and yelling, How dare you show your face here? If you want a divorce, then don't come back. If anything happens to my son because of you, I will fight you. I didn't want to come back either, but there was something I had to get off my chest without telling them. Through Helen, I could see the emaciated hand lying on the hospital bed behind her, trembling. He was gripping the thin blanket, as if using all his strength to restrain himself, but I didn't care. Lily's child was gone. Henry's reaction to this news was minimal. In fact, when I mentioned it, the hand that had been trembling surprisingly calmed down. Helen erupted. If it weren't for you, how could Lily use the child to threaten me? How could she accidentally lose the baby? It's all because of you, all your fault. I smiled. I also heard that it was you who pushed Lily, causing her to fall and miscarry, leading to excessive bleeding and a hysterectomy, and you had to compensate her a large sum of money. Helen's face turned pale. I will never give her that money. I shook my head, staring directly at Helen. What I'm here to say today is not about that. There's something I need to tell you, which may not matter to you in the end, because Lily won't be bearing your heir. Maybe there will be someone else in the future. Suddenly, Henry spoke up, his voice hoarse. Karina, there won't be anyone else. I won't, absolutely won't. It doesn't matter, Henry. Your decision doesn't need to be told to me. I'm just here to inform you all of something. We had a child together, but when he was almost 7 months old, his dad was too busy celebrating with another woman and missed his chance to be with him. Turning to the stunned Helen, I added, your first grandchild was killed by Lily. Seeing Helen's face turn even whiter, I knew that from that moment on, Lily wouldn't stand a chance at getting that compensation, especially with Henry's sharp lawyers. This was one of my purposes for coming to the hospital. Finally, Henry mustered the courage to peek out from behind his mother, his cracked lips trembling as he spoke in despair. Karina, what you said isn't true, right? I know you hate me, but what you said just now isn't true, is it? My eyes glistened slightly. Unfortunately, Henry, when you were eagerly anticipating another child, my child didn't want you anymore. That was all I had to say. Everything else they wanted to know would certainly come to light. It just needed time. Henry started coughing violently, his chest heaving as if he was about to cough out his lungs. In the end, he forcefully spat out a mouthful of blood, his face drained of color. Helen, barely out of her grief over losing her grandson, was hysterical, as she rushed out of the ward to call a doctor. I stood there as an onlooker, witnessing the once bright and lively young man, now reduced to a dying man, withering away. Henry, I actually didn't want you to die in that car accident. Waking up from an accident, I suddenly realized that death is the easiest punishment. The one who made mistakes dies, and it's like all their sins can be forgiven, but whoever thinks about how long it takes for the wounds of the victim to heal. So, when I heard that you woke up with amnesia, I was actually happy. It doesn't matter if you feel remorseful or determined to repent after losing your memory. One thing is for sure, this event will torment you for a long time in the future. To me, that's the real punishment. Death would have been too easy for you. You have to pay the price for your mistakes, Henry. I initially wished for you to grow old alone, forever living in regret. But then, I realized it was unrealistic. So, I only have one thought for you in this lifetime. Let's never meet again. Henry, because I have seen the light, I've decided to try and forgive myself, and forgive you. There's a long life ahead. In the future, all I want is to be happy and live my life well. Upon his release from the hospital, Henry's first act was to fire the employees who were close to Lily in the company. Though he knew that even if Karina found out about his actions, she wouldn't care. Still, he punished himself in a self-destructive manner, seeking redemption for his mistakes. The amnesia was just an excuse. He thought that by pretending nothing had happened and then leaving the hospital, he could continue to approach Karina. He could repent and seek redemption, wearing the mask of amnesia to alleviate some of the guilt. But before leaving the hospital, Karina gave him a parting gift. Seeing Karina's cold and resolute figure as she left the ward made his heart ache with heaviness for many years to come, even when waking in the dead of night. He worked hard on his recovery, only to find that upon his release, Karina had already blocked him, disappearing completely from his life. At that moment, he felt his life had lost all meaning. From the beginning, he knew that Lily had approached him with a purpose. He didn't love her. In fact, he was repulsed by the woman his mother had arranged for him. So why did he eventually compromise? Getting drunk was just an excuse. He was desperate to find an outlet to vent his frustrations. He admitted he wasn't a good person. Growing up as a single child, he faced the scorn of others. Simple fights among peers would be turned into accusations of having no father to raise him. Being poor would become a reason for suspicions when something went missing in class. Even the money his mother worked hard to earn from various jobs would be viewed with doubt by others. Growing up with malicious intent around him, How pure could he really be? He wished he could speculate on others' intentions towards him with the utmost malice, so he could strike back in advance and avoid unnecessary harm. However, he yearned to face Kaina with a clear conscience, the one who, though cold to him on the surface, would secretly defend him. If Henry was the resilient weed surviving in adversity without blessings, then Kaina was the flower nurtured by love. When he had the chance to get close to her, he wanted to magnify the innocent side of his heart infinitely. He was willing to become what Kaina liked: clean, sunny, and cheerful. As long as she was pleased, he could transform into anyone. But when did he begin to change? It was perhaps when he successfully earned his first bucket of gold. Under the admiring gazes of others, his vanity surged even more. Desires were like an endless black hole. From initially simple goals of making money to give Kaina and his mother a good life, it turned into having more money and avoiding the disdain of others. Eventually, as Henry accumulated more possessions, he lost the most precious thing he once desired. He grew more successful, but his relationship with Kaina deteriorated. Some people, when transitioning from their lowest point to their peak, always remind themselves of the hardships from their hardships, but not Henry. The more successful he became, the more he detested recalling his past embarrassments. However, his mother seemed to relish reminding him of their impoverished days, trying to control his life. Henry, I worked so hard to raise you, so everything I do is for your own good. Henry, your mom just wants a grandchild. In the first few years of marriage, from quietly reminding him to have a child soon to openly pressuring Kaina with all sorts of remedies, Henry felt like he was losing his mind. He could see Kaina's resistance to those remedies, but he was a coward, unable to stand up to his mother, only able to watch as Kaina was put in a difficult position. He thought that having a child could break free from his mother's control and live the life he and Kaina wanted. But reality proved him wrong, one misstep at a time. He couldn't admit his weakness, only helplessly caught in the middle, arguing with Kaina time and time again. To him, these arguments were not enough to shake their relationship. If there was one thing he admired the most in this world, it was Kaina's parents. However bad their relationship may be, he envied the love between Kaina's parents. Their practical actions proved to Henry that true and steadfast love really existed in this world. Even in times of arguments, they still considered each other. Even in the end, dying together in disaster, they never gave up on each other. He thought that was the same between him and Kaina. Just get through the childbearing, and he would never make Kaina suffer again. So, when he learned he had to face Kaina's parents, he felt an unprecedented panic. At that moment, he could only think he had no face to meet her uncle and aunt. But as the accident happened, he deeply regretted it. So, he shielded Kaina with his body as much as possible. In his unconsciousness, he dreamt. In his dream, he and Kaina got lost. A child suddenly appeared and led them to a fork in the road. The child told him that one way was the way back, but he and Kaina couldn't choose the same path. Only later did he realize that it was not just one road. That road led to a life where he and Kaina couldn't intersect again. The next time he saw Kaina was at the seaside 2 years later. Unlike the tired and numb Kaina he had married, she now radiated light all over her body. She was gentle and peaceful, exuding an aura nurtured by happiness. As Henry watched her being embraced by the sea breeze, he instinctively wanted to walk over, but he restrained himself. Soon, Kaina had a shawl over her shoulders. The man tenderly held the petite her in his arms, resting his chin lightly on her head, speaking with both doting and helplessness. "It's windy by the sea, remember to dress warmly." Kaina coquettishly replied, "I know, I'll remember next time." The man wasn't stunning, but he was neat and tidy, exuding a scholarly grace. Kaina gently touched her stomach. "Honey, do you think if it's a girl in my belly, she'll look like you?" The man chuckled. "Don't say that. Our son might get upset." Then, the man leaned close to her ear again and whispered, "Of course, in 2 more months when our son is born, I'll work harder to try to give you a daughter." Kaina grabbed his arm and bit down affectionately. "You always know how to tease me." The man let her bite, his eyes smiling. "When our son is in kindergarten, we can have a daughter, and I'll protect mom, while brother protects sister. Isn't that nice?" Kaina asked. "But what if it's another son?" "Even better, the 3 of us will protect you. However, I heard giving birth is very painful." The man fell silent, his eyes showing visible heartache. "After this one, I'll get a vasectomy." Kaina laughed and asked, "No daughter then?" "No more. You hate pain the most. After this one, we won't have any more." Watching the 2 leave, Henry felt a pang in his heart, then covered his face and burst into tears. He could have had such happiness. The next time he saw Kaina was over 30 years later. Throughout all these years, he had been like a voyeur into other people's private lives, witnessing every major moment in Kaina's life, without daring to show himself. He had known Kaina for 28 years, experiencing every important moment in his life. Kaina was the light that guided the first half of his life, but unfortunately, he didn't protect it well enough. And so, after Kaina left, he found himself living in a year from the past, unable to move forward. Over the years, that man had been very good to Kaina, so good that he had no reason to intervene between them. She had been well taken care of, aging gracefully, her spirits maintained by the protection of her loved one, staying true and lovely as ever. "You promised to buy me ice cream after our walk," she pouted childishly, refusing to move from in front of a store. The young man beside her turned to the elegant man, with graying temples, but smiled helplessly. "Dad, can you handle Mom?" The man stepped forward, took her hand, and lovingly patted her head. "Sweetie, let's not eat now, or you might freeze your dentures." Kaina, annoyed, glared and almost bit him. "Don't underestimate my dentures." The sunset was beautiful at that moment, and the glow bathed Kaina's face, as if she was surrounded by bubbles of happiness.